You are listening to Heating and Eating, a show on energy poverty in Canada by Yasmin and Abhi. Hi, Yasmin.
Hi, Abby.
So picture this, right? We've both had this experience, I think. So we're at a conference.
Yeah,
You have a drink ticket in your hand. You're making
yeah.
small talk with people. We're networking.
I
People
know it
ask,
well.
people ask you, "Oh, so what do you do for a living?" What do you tell people?
Oh gosh, it's always the long story or the short story of,
Right.
our work is around decarbonization and improving housing and reducing energy poverty in households that have been underserved is usually my high level, and that leads to like 100 questions. I'm sure you've had the same thing.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, you start telling people, "Oh, I've dedicated my life to ending energy poverty in Canada." Usually people ask you, "Okay, what is energy poverty?" And I don't know about you, but I often struggle to like really capture, like talk about what do we
Mm,
mean when you say energy poverty. So I thought today, let me grab my best friend Yasmin, and I'll
yes.
I'll bounce some ideas on like what is it, what is energy poverty, and there's all these terms floating around, right? There's energy unaffordability, energy
Hmm.
insecurity, energy inequality, energy cost burdens. And so how do we make sense of all of these terms, and what do we mean, what do you mean and I mean
Yeah.
when we say energy poverty?
I think it's so important because these terms are kind of thrown around, and I think there's not a great understanding of what the differences are
Hmm.
um, within the sector. But even with researchers, there's percentages, there's stats definitions,
Hmm.
um, and there's not a singular definition for each of them. So I think for sure I'm going to appreciate this conversation, and I hope others will too.
Yeah, and I hope so too. And sometimes you can get caught up, and this is what happens inevitably. We get caught up in the definitional kind of statistical aspects of it. Is it X% of your income on this or that? And that.
Hmm.
So what I wanted to do was to just like strip away the context of like the programs and policies, and just like conceptually, like how do we experience it like mentally, build it up from the ground up concepts, and then see how far we get. You willing to try this with me?
I love it.
All right.
Let's do it.
Okay. So fundamentally, first, something that's easy to wrap your head around, high energy bills.
Hmm.
Households, if it's going to happen due to a number of things, right? Either your energy or your fuel prices are very high and those go up and down. Large parts of the price of fuel or the price of energy, dollars per kilowatt hour or dollars per
Absolutely.
liter of propane, out of your control.
Yep, absolutely. And
Or,
the charges on the bill, right? Which have
exactly,
nothing to do with consumption,
nothing.
that
Yeah.
are there whether you use energy or
It's
not
just the
in any
privilege of having access
Right.
to energy is
The
those.
cost.
So those you have no control over those elements.
100%.
What you may have some control over, we can get into details a little bit, is
Hmm.
just either your prices are high and or your energy use is high. Maybe you have an old appliance.
Yep.
Your house has a poor quality energy, and money is just leaking out of your home.
Right.
Or some parts of it could be like what technically is called occupant behavior, right? Maybe your energy use practices are wrong.
Hmm.
Not wrong necessarily, but maybe the way you use energy and when you use it and how you use it
It's
is
not
contributing to
optimized.
high energy use.
Yeah, it's not optimized to lower your bill. Yeah.
Exactly. And so you put all these things together, and that's how you end up with having high energy bills. So some of it you have some control over, some of it you don't have control over as a household, as a family, as a Canadian. Seem fair?
Agreed, agreed. And just to
Mm,
add another layer in that it
mm,
depends on where you live and the amount of control
exactly.
you have on each of these.
1,000,000%. So let's hold
Yeah.
on to that thought and let's build on this, right? Okay. So now we have high energy bills. You have a home with high energy bills, and then you add another element to it. So you have high
Mm,
energy bills and you have low incomes or you have low disposable incomes. And in my head, there's a bit of a distinction. Oftentimes we
agreed.
talk about incomes, but really what matters is like what money you're left with after you pay for housing, which is, no one wants to be homeless, right?
Absolutely. I do think there's a distinction, and it's something that we have really thought about a lot of. It's affordability. It's
Exactly.
how affordable are these given everything that else is happening in your life. And just
Yes.
if you'll let me just kind of go down that, because I live in BC and
Hmm.
childcare costs are absolutely through the roof.
Hmm.
And so, we need childcare in order to go to work, in order to pay our mortgage, in order to have a home.
Hmm.
And so that's not a choice of a cost, and it is so high that creates a different affordability than in another area of the country.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so it's not just like income that's left to you after taxes, but there's, every household has to deal with different budgetary items, right?
Hmm.
Childcare, transportation, rent, mortgage, fuel expenses,
I was just
caregiving
gonna say, yeah.
responsibilities.
A lot of the communities that we work spend a lot of money back
Mhm.
to their parents, back to their home, and that's not to them. That's not a discretionary spend. That's culturally sort of required in terms of that's why they're in Canada is to send money home.
Mhm. And it's not just because people are not good at budgeting.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yes. They're
So,
better
so
than budgeting, I think, than most.
Than most, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, because it's a lived reality for a lot of people. Is
Hmm.
the paycheck to paycheck trying to balance these things, and so energy unaffordability as a concept is you've got high energy bills due to a combination of things we discussed earlier, and then you have low income left over from which you have energy bills is one of the things you have to pay. Seem fair?
Totally. Agreed.
Okay. So then let's build on this concept again. So if you have energy unaffordability, so where I say high energy cost burdens, I mean energy unaffordability.
Hmm.
And then what happens to households when you are experiencing energy unaffordability, right? I think, the way it manifests in the lives of people is in energy insecurity because there's uncertainty about how high your bills are going to be the next month. There
Can
is,
I
yeah,
think it's uncertainty of how you're going to be able to pay them.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And the stress, the emotional
Totally.
toll it takes on you. It's financial stress, and you
Yeah.
tell me if I'm wrong, but it manifests in like a lot of newcomers, like, they have trouble asking for help and inviting people
Oh
over
yeah.
to their homes because of how uncomfortable their homes might
Oh
be,
my gosh.
uncomfortably warm or uncomfortably cold.
Yeah, so many stories of just folks not really not. I mean, your home is always, regardless of your home is a reflection of who you are, and I think there's a lot of pride in your home, regardless of, well, you want to have pride in your home, I should say.
Hmm.
And I think when you're in energy insecurity, what we've really heard is that there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of embarrassment. Folks, don't want to invite friends over. They really isolate themselves.
Hmm.
Yeah, some tough situations that is not I think is not captured when you say, the 6% or it's so much more than that.
Yeah. And so the way high energy cost burdens or energy unaffordability shows up in lives of people is that it's uncertainty about their financial future,
Hmm.
uncertainty about their role and place in their community, financial stress, social isolation, like a lack of sense of
Hmm.
belonging. So all of those are like the material reality of energy unaffordability shows up in lives of people in like very profound and deeply human ways. And then, in addition to that, there is also the unreliability. And if you're a rural community or if you're a remote, in a remote indigenous community, unreliability of supply of fuels and not being able to. And so, if you're a rural community, you have to pay upfront for your propane delivery, right? For your heating oil
Hmm.
delivery. And if you're not certain about being able to make that payment because of the cost, your energy bills are higher due to a combination of things we discussed earlier. And that adds another whole another element to it. And so that to me, that's what energy insecurity means, is that how
Mm.
experiencing energy and affordability makes you feel like less in control of your life, your household, your future, and your destiny. Is that fair to say?
100%. And what you're saying is just reminding me of an experience we had with a First Nations community who was experiencing power outages. And the impact of that, of course, we know in the sector the impact of a power outage, but from a cultural perspective, every time the power went out for multiple days, of course, all the food in the freezer was ruined. And this was the food that the community had spent all summer hunting for. This is their meat for
Absolutely.
the year. And so when that power goes out and all that food is ruined, that has significant cultural, nutritional, so many impacts on the community, who is now then forced to go to the store
Yep.
on that community, which is, we have all heard of the food prices that are there. So it's so much more than just a power outage. It's so
Right.
much more than just a high bill.
And it's a disconnection from your heritage and your community
Oh
and,
my
uh,
gosh, so
and
much.
and
Yeah,
all
we
of
could have
those
a whole
things.
thing talking about that. Yeah.
And just to add to that, when there is a power outage, and especially in the colder seasons, households resort to things like using wood for heating and stuff like that, especially in remote communities. And indigenous households and rural households in Canada are at high risk for fatalities due to house fires, in large part because of non-conventional fuels used for heating during things like power outages and stuff like that, which is a direct, like consequence to mortality and health, right?
And I think we've really taken a holistic, pragmatic approach to that work. So making sure that when there are wood burning fireplaces in a home, because of these energy insecurities, we're making sure that those are safe, that the air quality is as good as possible for the residents, because everything is connected in this way.
Right. And so then building on that, there is a certain pattern to how you are vulnerable to energy insecurity, just like you just brought up. There is a geographic patterning, like we said, rural communities, remote communities, and there's also kind of
Yeah.
socioeconomic, cultural, demographic patterns to how energy insecurity shows up in different people's lives. Did you want to talk a little bit more about, like, for example, from newcomers' perspective, the
Yeah.
seniors?
I mean, when you're talking about that, I think for me, it's the usual suspects who are experiencing this, and hopefully not a surprise to anybody, but it's, indigenous communities, newcomers, immigrants, people of color, lower income households, seniors, single mothers. It is, the folks that have those already have so many intersectional barriers are the ones that are burdened with this energy insecurity.
Yep. And in as much as energy insecurity is a personal experience that may vary from household to household, there are certain archetypes of experiences that a common experience is shared between households of like similar socioeconomic grouping, geographic location, and demographic profiles. Is it fair to say, for example, I'm thinking, renters, the way that, if you're a renter, in some provinces, missing a utility payment if you're paying utility bills is as consequential as almost missing a rent payment. It could lead to eviction, and you have very less control over upgrades that you can make on your home and actions that you can take to remove yourself from energy insecurities, right?
Yeah, it's a great example of how somebody's life circumstance, whether it's renting or owning or what have you, has an impact on this. And it's there's also somebody told me that in one part of the country, that if you don't have air conditioning, so cooling, that it is a reason for Child Protective Services to look at whether you're
Right.
taking care of your children appropriately because you're not able to cool. So
Yep.
it's like that's energy. People will be paying for cooling
Yep.
in order to, of course, keep their children. What is the impact of that given energy inequity, given energy insecurity, given all of these other pieces, right?
Exactly. And, so single parents typically in Canada are single mother households, female-led households that
Mhm.
have significant caregiving responsibilities, which tends to make them underemployed in certain contexts. So there's
Yeah.
existing underlying vulnerabilities, like you said, the quote-unquote
Yeah.
usual suspects face. And when burdened with energy insecurity, there is an overlap between energy insecurity and how it shows up and who it affects and how deeply it affects. If you're a senior and if you have energy insecurity, then chances
Mhm.
are you are even more vulnerable to extreme heat events and
Yeah.
consequences of high, like a heat dome as it happened in BC and Alberta. And so that to me is energy inequity in that like the patterns in which energy insecurity shows up in lives of people, there's a certain inequality to it, and the different
Yeah.
groups that have pre-existing vulnerabilities, energy insecurity shows up in very profound ways. The unfortunate part of this is that those households are also experience this deeply. The consequences are more severe, and they also have a less ability to take action on these things. Is that fair to say?
Agreed. I think one quote I heard recently was those who are closest to the issue are closest to the solution and yet furthest from the resources.
Perfect. Yeah, that sounds just about right. Which
Mm-hmm.
leads me to talking about energy poverty. Is that like
Mm-hmm.
for me, energy poverty is that given that energy inequity, and which again is like we're peeling layers of the onion, right? And so
Yes.
energy poverty is a more encompassing term, and what it means is that like it shows, given that energy inequity is a reality, the consequences of not taking action on energy inequity, energy unaffordability,
Mm,
energy insecurity is that it shows up in physical and mental health of people, cardiovascular illness, asthma from like mold and
mm-hmm,
condensation in
mm-hmm.
people's homes, kids struggling to pay attention in schools and struggling in
Yep.
homework and poor educational outcomes
Mm-hmm.
in our communities and integrating them in helping them develop a sense of belonging, helping them succeed in their work, in their careers, in their schools, and also on our ability to take action on climate and meet our net zero goals. Is so that the project of energy poverty really is the consequences of not taking action on energy inequity. What do you think of this?
I like that a lot. And I think it's interesting when I think of, the energy efficiency sector or the demand side management sector. I think it's challenging for our sector to draw a straight line
Hmm.
between all of these really big, serious, challenging social issues to the fact that a house doesn't have insulation and air sealing and an efficient heating, right? Like like I think a lot for our sector. But when you are in homes and when you are talking to people and you hear how high bills and a leaky home and an inefficient home and already struggling to make ends meet, just the impact of that. And I think on the flip side, what we hear in programs when we are addressing those pieces gives us this, like, really just fundamentally tells us that we are addressing this. We are making all of these impacts. When
Hmm.
people say how much air sealing and insulation mean to them, and I mean, they're not talking about the insulation or the air sealing. They're talking about the impact that
Impact,
that
right?
will have for
Absolutely.
them in their lives in so many ways. So, yeah,
So
I love it.
solutions are here, right? So like our demand side management programs, utility programs, retrofit programs, they're really concerned about high energy bills. We don't even really get into unaffordability. I think a lot of programs in
Mm,
this country, they don't really distinguish. I mean, they're income qualified, but they're not really prioritizing the lowest income households or anything like that. And so like our solutions are kind of here between
mm,
unaffordability and high bills, but like the consequences of like not taking action on this, like the effects of our interventions or not having adequate interventions are profound in the lives of our communities, and they show up in different ways in lives of different people, and it's really holding Canada back from achieving, I think, multiple national priorities, our housing goals, net zero goals, like leaving no one behind, like integrating, and our kind of social equality goals. And so I think that's why energy poverty to me, the way I think of energy poverty is as a set of like socioeconomic challenges that you can address by improving energy efficiency and the quality of people's homes. So you have a set of tools, right? Insulation, air sealing. The problems you're solving are like more profound than reducing kilowatt hours, reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Even as much as that is important, I think the larger project of reducing energy poverty is really taking action on all of these things.
I agree, and I think, pardon the pun, but it's so inefficient to design a low income energy efficiency program with only one of those pieces in mind, right? If we're going to be installing this stuff, making sure that we're addressing health and safety and education and awareness, and making sure we're hiring from the community and building the ecosystem, and ensuring folks have the additional supports that are available. These programs are it takes so much to lift a program off the ground, and it takes so much trust in the community, and it really is a huge lift that once we're in a home, once we're actually working in a home, we look around and there's so many places that we can support, and it's such a shame when programs, when we've delivered programs where you're air sealing next to a broken roof, right, or a broken window, and it's because of the constraints of the program that the goal is efficiency, or the goal
they're narrowly scoped,
or it's not a holistic designed program.
And all the resources, time, effort that goes into building trust with communities, right?
Ooh.
Yeah, and qualifying them based on all these criteria, and then hiring the right people and going into their homes, and all that resource, I feel like it could be better leveraged once you're already in there to do things like, I don't know, mold remediation, asbestos removal, anti-slip floors, and just thinking. And so I think this, for people who are watching this, we didn't practice any of this. I hit Yasmin blind with my AI generated art. But what you're segued really into is energy justice. Home energy justice for me is a specific kind of orientation about thinking about solving energy poverty, but with targeted, inclusive, and restorative solutions. So while they're already in people's homes, I try to do more than energy efficiency. Or I call it energy efficiency plus. You're there because of an energy efficiency program. That's great. But if we had, partnerships and resources from public health, for example, or community health or housing, there's so much we could do with households to improve the quality, improve their resilience to not just to weather, but the resilience to just life, and help restore a quality of life for people. And I think that is that specific orientation of solving energy poverty to me is what I call home energy justice. Does it ring true to you?
Oh gosh, absolutely. I think that is really what I have spent my career doing at Cambo, is creating programs that do more, because it's to us, I feel like it's so frustrating to go into a home and only be able to do one thing and only be able to address a certain piece. And I think the challenges that we've identified in this conversation are, what I have heard are goals of government and goals of society, is to improve housing, improve affordability, improve the workforce, achieve our climate goals, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I have heard all of these, and we can do it with a well-designed program. So I think that's that's our North Star that we really strive towards. And look at this beautiful AI picture. Oh my God.
it sparks joy, doesn't it?
It really does.
And so, Asmin, that's perfect. Actually, so that's where I was leading to, is that I think what we are in the business of energy efficiency, narrowly speaking, right? But broadly, our project is I think you're absolutely right. We as a country, as fellow Canadians, we have a set of overlapping priorities improving housing, improving quality of lives for people, helping seniors age in place, helping people find homes that meet their needs, helping newcomers integrate into their communities, helping, people have a better quality of life, leaving no one behind in the net zero economy.
Reconciliation, and
Yeah,
like
exactly. Truth and
anti-racism, all of
exactly.
these things.
And,
Yeah.
and I don't want to make this sound like a silver bullet, right? Because it's not. And if we're being
No.
honest, it's not. But what low income energy efficiency and leading with energy efficiency, it gives you another set of tools through which you can achieve some of these national priorities in the ways in which they overlap for some of these households if we led solutions with energy efficiency and did a little beyond just insulation and air sealing and caulking. And so as I don't know what the right word is because I don't want to say unsexy, as not cool as like insulation air sealing can be. If we approach this with like an efficiency plus mindset, if we approach this with an energy justice mindset, if we approach this as a problem of solving energy poverty, which is like solving the consequences of not taking action. If you approach this from this perspective, I think energy efficiency can be a very effective tool in solving a whole bunch of problems. And I think this is where maybe because energy efficiency programs have kind of been siloed within utility programs and provincial programs, they're doing a lot of really good things in solving for this.
Yes.
Right. But our challenge really as Canadians is to like think of ways of enhancing their capacity so we can solve for this. Is that fair to say?
Agreed. I totally agree. And the two things that I think are really resonating for me. One, I think it's lifting our head up of the silo that we are specifically in, whether utility, climate, housing, and seeing that there are other goals outside in our communities. And so designing for that. I think the other thing you said that's really important is it's not a silver bullet. Nobody is sitting here saying that insulation and air sealing and new heating systems are going to solve poverty.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. What it does do, though, is relieves some of the stress and some of the burden for these communities. It makes things a little bit easier. It addresses one of the 100 things that they're dealing with. And at the same time, addresses all of our societal goals. And so I think that's certainly a pushback that we have received over time is that, well, this is a poverty, this is an income issue, this is a poverty issue. I think it's looking at how we can use the tools of the programs we will be designing to do more. As you say, efficiency plus, right?
That is a great point to stop this episodes of Heating and Eating, Yasmin. Thank you so much. And what I want to do next time when we chat, I want to pick up on this and I want to talk about like what are the negative consequences of like poorly designed programs, like what would happen on this project if all we did was like take someone's oil heating away and just slapped a heat pump on without anything else to support the larger project.
Yeah, well, that's exciting. Certainly we've done a lot. We've done, we've done it for enough that we have got a lot of learnings, done a lot of things right, but also, made some mistakes and learned from them over time of how to design a program. So that's exciting. Thanks, Abby.
And what a treat for all our listeners will this and the next episode be. Thanks for joining me, Yasmin.
Thanks, Abby.
Cheers. Chat next time.
Bye.